Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Papa Mark's Place. As you see, I am getting ready for the holidays. They will be upon us before we know it. And it got me thinking, my family had this long-standing tradition during the holidays where right about now in October or November, we would start making what we called Krauts. These look like stuffed cabbage, Golumpkis, whatever you want to call them. Everybody has a different name for them. But our family has always made them very different than any other recipe I've ever seen. And any people I've ever offered them to have tried them and said, wow, these are really good. I've never had them this way. So I decided I was going to put it on my channel. And for all of my beloved family who thought this recipe was lost over time, surprise, it's not. I've been holding it, and I'm going to show you how to make it today, right here on Papa Mark's Place. I have something very special I wanted to share before we get going. This picture here, this dapper little gentleman on the left, grew up to be my Uncle Billy. He was one of the coolest men I've ever known, and I loved him so much. This adorable little cutie pie, she grew up to be my cousin Frances. She was my mom's best friend growing up and almost like a sister. She was a trip, too. I loved her so much, I miss her. And this beautiful little ray of light grew up to be my mother, Marlene. Scarecrow, I think I miss you most of all. And all three had the very same thing in common that myself and many of my current family still have in common to this day. That lady in the background, that strong, proud woman, that is their Grandma Stryker, also known as my Grandma Stryker, but she was my great-grandma Stryker, Apollonia Hubler Stryker. And the recipe I'm going to show you today, I believe, came from her. It's very possible it might have come from her mother, Eva, but I really don't know. Our family all loved those Krauts so much that we got to the point where everyone, my parents, my sisters, and myself, we were all rolling Krauts at home to bring up to Nana and Grandpa's house. Nana and Grandpa, they were rolling a set of Krauts up at their house. My great aunt, Tunti, she was rolling Krauts at her house. My Uncle Billy and his group, they were rolling Krauts at their house. And my great aunt Frances and my cousin Frances, their group, they were rolling Krauts over to their house. Come to think of it, I think Frances might have baked hers in the oven with bacon on them and tomato sauce or tomato soup on top. I'm not sure. Denise, please correct me on this if I'm wrong and you're watching. We had Krauts everywhere, so no matter who you went to visit, you had a plate of Krauts. Okay, we're going to make the rice for our Krauts. Now, I know a lot of you are going, everybody knows how to make rice, but not really. It can be tricky, and I remember I didn't know how to make rice until somebody showed me, so for all those folks out there that are in that boat, this is for you. To make rice, you need 1 cup of dry rice to 2 cups of liquid. Now, what I like to do is I like to take any broth or stock that I have left over in the refrigerator, and instead of throwing it out, I like to use that instead of water. It gives it a little more flavor. Today I got beef, which is great. And I have 1, 2, alright, I have 2 cups. Now I want to make 3 cups, that's water. And last but not least, there's 4 cups of water. Turn your burner on to high. So to make the rice, you're supposed to put 1 tablespoon of butter in there. If you don't want to use butter, you can absolutely go ahead and use shortening. It won't make a difference. Or in this case, I'm using bacon fat because I like the extra flavor that it gives it. We need the grease anyways, and I just made bacon a little while ago. So I need a tablespoon. A tablespoon is approximately 2 teaspoons. I'm going to put it right in the water. Now we're making a double batch, so that's roughly 2 tablespoons. Next, you're going to take your white rice. You don't have to rinse it. Just check it. Make sure there's no stones or anything foreign in there. And we're going to pour 2 cups. Okay, everyone, we're going to start our filling now. I have 2 pounds of onions here, and I am going to throw them in the freezer. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, Papa Mark, why are you going to put them in the freezer? Well, let me tell you a little story real quick. About 1 billion years ago, I used to do these big, huge buckets of onions, so the customer would have fresh sliced onions every day, and they wouldn't be bad. So we used to take this large garbage pail, fill it full of ice water, and then take all the onions we were getting ready to cut, and we'd throw them in this bucket and let them sit for about a half an hour, 45 minutes before we cut them. And lo and behold, when you go to cut them, your eyes don't tear, and they don't stink that bad. I guess the juice in between the layers kind of like freezes to a gel so it doesn't smell as bad. But I remember doing that, and I've done it ever since. You throw them in the freezer, you get the same effect. So we're going to start the filling in probably about 45 minutes. So I'm going to toss these onions in the freezer for about a half an hour or so, and they won't smell as bad. You don't have to, but it's just a tip that'll help keep your eyes from tearing and keep the house from smelling so bad. So we're going to cook our cabbage. So you need to get 2 big pots, the biggest ones you can find. Fill them full of water and put them on your stove on a high heat. And you're going to bring that water to a rolling boil. We covered a rolling boil before, so I'm not going to show you that. In the meantime, you're going to get your cabbage ready. Now, they tell you most of the time to throw your outside cabbage leaves away. I don't. They may look a little dirty or rough, but you're going to boil them, and you're not going to use those to cook with anyways, but you're just going to use them for flavor and to sit on the bottom of the pan. I'll show you that in a minute. Let's talk cabbage for a second. I'm using plain old regular green cabbage because I like it nice and pungent. That's what I'm going for in the recipe, but you absolutely can use Savoy if you want to. And I've also got a head of red cabbage here. I'm going to show you a variation on our Krauts with that. That's really delicious, but again, you don't have to have that either. If you want, just get plain old straight green cabbage. We're going to prep our cabbage while our water boils. I have 3 heads of green cabbage. Get some really nice ones. If the outside leaves don't look great, that doesn't matter. Just make sure they're nice and big. I've also got this beautiful head of red cabbage. I'm going to cook that also, and I'm going to show you how to do a variation on our delicious Krauts. But we have to core this before we boil it.
so the leaves will all fall off nice. So what you're going to do, get a nice sharp knife. Be very careful. I'm going to take a very sharp knife, cut that out. Again, leave your outside leaves on. And then you can see the core right here. You're going to cut on an angle all the way around. Be very careful because cabbage is hard to cut. You can rock it a little bit if you want. That's okay. And pop! The core comes out. Now, I'll show you a secret. Save this, and I'll show you later how we can go ahead and start this growing again in the windowsill, and then next summer, have fresh cabbage. Take your head of cabbage once it's hoed out, and set it aside. Do your other ones. We're still waiting for our water to come to a boil. Again. Cut the core off. Like I said, be really careful. And then again, on an angle. Watch somebody else do this. And she mentioned how much she hated doing it. And I'm right along with you. I can't stand doing this either. Every other part of it. But I hate cutting the cores out of these cabbages. There, pop. Now you're going to do that on every head of cabbage that you have. And at that point, your cabbage heads are ready to blanch in the water. We're not going to cook them all the way. We're just going to do what they call blanching. For all you new cooks, all that means basically is take a vegetable and partially cook it or partially boil it so it's not completely cooked all the way through. All of our cores are cut out. We're going to cook these three in the 2 pots that we have on the stove. They're not come to a boil yet, but pretty close. We're going to go and check back in about 5-10 minutes, and we'll get to boil on our cabbage. You're going to cook your purple cabbage or your red cabbage, whatever, in a separate pot. It's going to release a lot of color, and you don't want that in all of your krauts. Okay? So set him aside. We're going to cook these three in the 2 pots that we have on the stove. They're not come to a boil yet, but pretty close. We're going to go and check back in about 5-10 minutes, and we'll get to boil on our cabbage. Folks, full disclosure, when you make krauts, your house is going to stink to high heaven for probably about a week or 2 of cabbage and the smell of the krauts. To me, it smells like Christmas in home, so I like it. But may I make a suggestion that you go, before you start cooking your cabbage, and close all the bedroom doors and keep them closed while you're cooking. Okay? That's my tip for the day, and I'll be back in a few minutes when the water starts to boil. Okay, we're back. Been about maybe 10-15 minutes. And as you see, my water is at a rolling boil. The one on the left, not quite yet, but pretty close. So we're going to put our cabbages in now. Very carefully. They're heavy, and if you drop them, they're going to splash boiling water all over you. So don't do that, okay? This is my smallest one. I'm going to put it core side down. As you see, they do float. And for the big pot, I think we'll put the big head of cabbage in there. Again, core side up. They get such a pretty green when they start to cook. Look at that. Now, like I said, if a lot of the leaves chip off on the outside, that's okay. We're going to have a use for that too. We are going to let these boil. Keep an eye on your water level. Make sure that doesn't boil out. If it does, just add a little water. But we're going to let these boil for about a half an hour to 45 minutes until the leaves start to separate and fall off all by themselves. Okay, So it's been an hour, and these are boiling away. As you can see, the leaves are starting to fall off. That's exactly what you want. They're still pretty raw in the middle and hard, but you don't want to overcook them because they'll get mushy. You just want to cook them enough where the leaves are starting to fall off, and you can gently peel the leaves off. That's what we're going to do. First, we are going to take them out because they're crazy hot. We're going to take them out and we're going to let them cool in one of those colanders so we don't burn our hands to death. Use something nice and strong because they're heavy. I'm using my grandmother's old turkey forks, believe it or not. Very heavy. Those are the leaves that we're going to roll with. Aren't they beautiful? So be very gentle with your little head of cabbage now. Now the remaining leaves we're going to take out and gently put in the bowl on top of the head of the cabbage. Then we're going to let it cool. In the meantime, we're going to refill both of these pots, bring them up to a boil again, and we're going to cook the last 2 heads of cabbage. Now all we got to do is prep the cabbage. It smells so good. If you like cabbage as much as I do. Oh, wow. Well, I'll check back in a minute. Now here's a little tip for you. You're going to want to let your cabbage cool, but you want to keep it nice and moist. If it dries out, it's going to mess things up. So those loose leaves that you had in the pan, that I said were a little dirty maybe or whatever, they're boiled now so they're clean, but they're not usable, and they're good for flavor, and they're good for insulation. So put them in your colander and then take the extra leaves that are left over and gently put them on top of your cabbage. Then put a kitchen towel on top and let it sit aside. This way, like I said, they'll stay nice and moist. Okay, we're back. It has been about maybe an hour or so. We let these cool a bit. Our cabbages, aren't they beautiful? They smell good. Careful, that cabbage water that is dripping out is very hot and it stinks. So you don't want to get it all over the place. Now, to peel a cabbage head, I'm not going to make you watch me do all 4 of them, but you need to see how to do this. These are partially cooked. So what you're going to do is gently, from the top side out, just kind of jiggle it a little and loosen it a little. The leaves will actually come off all by themselves. These extra ones that are crappy and dirty, and you can throw them aside. Don't throw them out because we're going to use them. These are the top ones. They're usually kind of tough. Now, like I said, just jiggle this a little bit and loosen it up. Watch out, after all this time, they're still pretty hot. Flip it over, and it takes a little finesse. You got to kind of get it started. It's like starting with them saran wrap or pieces of tape, you know. This is very important. This vein right here is very tough and woody. So for each leaf, you're going to carefully cut it down even with the leaf. You can throw that away and then trim it. Then lay your cabbage leaf down like that. Look, there's the next one. If they tear a little bit, that's okay, but these are nice, big, beautiful leaves. They're gorgeous. Whether you're using Savoy cabbage, or whether you're using red cabbage, or you're using plain old regular green cabbage like I'm doing here, you're going to prepare them the exact same way. As you see, there's a hole here. That doesn't matter. We can fix that when we fold it in. There's 3. See, as I said, after a while, they just come loose and they just fall off all by themselves. So it's not difficult. You'll get the hang of it at first. Just be careful with the knife because, you know, do as I say, not as I do, but this is a dangerous way to cut them. And any culinary person or kitchen person is going to tell you, oh, that's dangerous, he's crazy. And they're right. I've done this I don't know how many years and never cut myself yet until someone comes along and starts talking to me while I'm trying to do it. and breaks my concentration. That's when I get cut. Alright, we'll do one more. Now when you're done with this cabbage head, you're not going to throw the remaining cabbage out. We're going to save it. We're going to make soup out of it and stock and all kinds of cool stuff. This one looks about there, so we're going to set this aside for just a minute. And we're going to work on the other head of cabbage. Once we work on the other head of cabbage, we'll see how many leaves we have. I have some in a pot already there. So we'll see what we have, and then we'll make our filling. This is very important. Don't forget to take your clean towel and just cover it. We want to keep it moist so it doesn't dry out. Alrighty, here we go. This is our meat mix. This is one of the secrets to the recipe. Now, we're starting with 2 pounds of ground beef. This is 80% lean. For anybody who doesn't know what that means 20% of it is fat, 80% is meat. If you go higher meat, like a 90% lean, it's going to make your Krauts very tough. You don't want to do that. We have 2 pounds here. I know it's kind of a funny color, but it's been sitting on the counter for a couple of minutes. And next, if you don't have a scale, by all means, just get the pre-weighed packages. They do make a meatloaf mix. You can use that in a pinch, but I found if you use that, the Krauts really just don't quite taste right. So it's better to do the meat mixture yourself. As I said, we're starting with 2 pounds of ground beef. Then we are going to take a 1/2 pound of ground veal. I'm weighing that out right now. Doesn't have to be exact. There's our 2 pounds of ground beef, our 1/2 pound of ground veal, and we're also going to take 1 pound of ground pork. I know this is a full pound because the package says it's a pound. Again, like I said, if you have to, you can use the meatloaf mix, but it's better to just get this and do it yourself. Comes out better that way. Set that aside and mix it. Mix this really, really, really well. You want it very well incorporated. It's kind of greasy and slimy, but get over it. If you're going to cook, your hands are going to get greasy and slimy and dirty. It's the only way to really cook. You're going to mix this up really, really well. Now, like I said, that's 3.5 pounds. So we're going to take about 1.5 pounds of rice and add that to our mixture. Our pre-made rice that we cooked in our bacon fat. Remember, this is probably not done enough, but that's okay because it's going to cook when we boil the Krauts. And you're going to mix this really, really, really well. Mix it all in together. And we have one more ingredient, and then we're ready to roll our Krauts and start cooking them bad boys. Now we're going to get our onions out of the freezer. I have grated 3 of them already because I assume you don't want to watch me grate and peel 5 onions. After the first few, I think you'll get the idea. These are frozen. We're going to cut the top off, cut the bottom off, take the scraps you're cutting off. We're going to throw them in the bowl with the cabbage scraps and some of the other vegetable scraps. And if you use my idea of freezing them, please note that they're not burning your face. Now, you absolutely can dice these, chop them, whatever, but I hate dicing vegetables. So I prefer to use a grater or a mandrel. It's a lot quicker, it cuts them a lot finer, and like I said, it's really fast. Do please watch your fingertips. and your hands, because these things can be dangerous. Even if you use a dollar store one like mine, they're still pretty sharp. And you will take your fingertips off if you're not careful. I guess if you're a criminal and you want to take your fingerprints off there, I guess maybe that's the way to go, but I'm not, and I don't, so please be careful. Now take that last piece, you don't need it, chuck it in the bin with our stock vegetables. And again, we're going to take our last onion, or in your case, the second one probably. And again, we're going to peel the first layer off because it's usually kind of leathery and tough. Our second onion. Well, this is your second onion and my last one. This is my fifth. This will give me 2 pounds of onions in this bowl. Roughly. Doesn't have to be exact. Again, like all my other recipes, make it to taste and make it the way you and your family like it. Just because I tell you to put that in there doesn't mean you have to. These onions, however, are a must. For this recipe, you really have to have the onions. But if you want to back them off a little or add more, you can do that. But you got to have onions in this recipe or it just won't taste right. There. See? That's all that's left in the bowl. And now we have 5 onions, or 2 pounds of onions. It's a little less than 2 pounds because we threw the tops and the bottoms away and we didn't use all of the onion, but that's pretty close. Doesn't have to be exact. And now that you have your onions all chopped up, take your meat mixture out. Make sure your rice is mixed in really, really well. But you want it really, really mixed well. If it's not mixed well and incorporated well, it's not going to taste good. And if you're going to go to all this trouble, you have to make the best Krauts that you absolutely can. You have to make the memorable Krauts that people are going to remember. And next year they're going to say, hey, are you going to make those? Those things you made last year? It's Christmas time. You going to do that? Thanksgiving. You're going to make Krauts? Trust me. Maybe you shouldn't make these because people are going to expect you to make them all the time then. Just tell them it's a holiday thing and I don't make them all the time. I only make them during the holidays. A lot like my Kahlua. Haven't made that yet, but I'll show you that soon too. Just keep mixing this up. And there you have it. There is our secret meat mixture. Now all we have left to do, we are going to get our cabbage leaves out and we are going to roll our Krauts and then we're going to cook them. And then the fun begins. We get to pig out. Okay, now we have the fun part. We get to roll our Krauts and cook them. Now, if you remember all the scraps I told you to save, you're going to line the bottom of your 2 pans with those scraps. Like so. You don't have to cut them real fine. It doesn't matter. You need it to cover the bottom of the pan. I have another neat little secret for you. These are the meat trays. Save them, wash them, and when you send people home with Krauts, You don't have to give them your precious Tupperware. You can give them these and they don't have to return them. Okay, let's get started. These are our cabbage leaves. Aren't they beautiful? And our meat mix. Gonna take your cabbage leaf. And see this little scoop part? You're gonna fill that full of meat. Not full, but you want them kind of about like that. And you put it down. If you've ever made sandwiches professionally, you'll see, or tacos, this is how we wrap them. There's one. And then we'll take our next one. We roll it. Fold it over. Keep rolling nice and tight. Set it down. There. Again. Roll it tight. Fold it over. Roll again. It's quite easy. It's actually kind of fun, really. For now. I mean, after... We used to do a lot of these. After a while, it gets a little old, but it's been a while since I've done this, and I'm not doing as many as we used to. Fold it over and roll. Oops. Fold it over and roll nice and tight. Do another one. Handful of meat. Doesn't have to be weighed, just eyeball it. You know, the size of your leaf depends on how much filling you're going to put. But it's not rocket science. There. And we're going to just keep going until all of our cabbage leaves or all of our meat mixture is gone. Now you see this one's kind of ripped up, so use a little less filling, that's all. You can still use it. Same principle. Fold it over. These are little bite-sized ones. Roll it. Roll it, fold it, there. You see, they don't have to be perfect, as long as they taste perfect. These are going to taste amazing. Now, I'm not going to make you watch me roll all of these, because it's going to take a little while, and you get the gist. Plus, I've watched a lot of other YouTube videos cooking videos and whatnot, and I always think to myself, oh my gosh, you're not going to make me watch you peel all of those potatoes or all of those onions, are you? And then I fast forward through it. So I don't want people to do that on my video. So I'm not going to do that to you. I don't think it's necessary. There. Pretty Krauts, aren't they? Now, once your tray starts to get full, take your pan that you lined with your cabbage. Put that one in there, too. And very, very, very gently lay your Krauts in on top of this cabbage. That's why we say just so the bottom of the Krauts don't get all burned on the bottom of the pan. This is the secret to our Kraut recipe. Most people bake their Krauts in the oven. I find they tend to come out kind of greasy that way. And my family's always done it this way. So I like to do it this way. We're going to layer these in right up to the top. Add a few more. You don't have to really pack them in tight. Matter of fact, you want to give them a little bit of room to breathe, sort of. Gotta get rid of the sniffles. So, one of the last key steps, you're going to take about a half a cup to a cup. It doesn't really matter. Eyeball it, depending on how much like your vinegar. You're going to take apple cider vinegar. You can use red if you want to, but apple cider actually works best. I've never used white, so I can't tell you about it. We're going to just pour in, like I said, maybe a half a cup to a cup of cider vinegar on top of our Krauts. And then we're going to fill it up just to the edge here, just to the top of your Krauts with water. We're actually kind of steaming these more than boiling them. Then you're going to put this on the stove on a medium-high heat. Again, we're going to put vinegar. Now this is a smaller pot, so we're not going to use quite as much vinegar, but I still like a lot. So again, like a half a cup, maybe a cup. And then we're going to add some water. Like I said, do it about a half of the way of the pan full. And we're going to put these on the stove on a medium-high burner as well. And once we have our green cabbage done, I will show you the variation. There's a little bit of difference on this, but not much. But in the taste, it's a huge difference. So you want to give these a try. Now we're going to let these steam or boil, whatever you want to call it, for probably about maybe 20 minutes to a half an hour. You can tell when they're cooked because the meat will change color and the kraut cabbage itself will change color. We'll check back in about 10 or 15 minutes and see how we're doing. Okay, as you see, our krauts are boiling. So we turn our heat down just a tiny bit and let them simmer for another 10 or 15 minutes. This pot hasn't quite got going yet, but there's a lot more krauts in there and a lot more weight. So we'll check back in a few more minutes. And last but not least, for the little variation that I promised you, we're going to take the krauts that we rolled in the red cabbage. And this is optional, you can leave this out. I'd like to give it a couple drops of liquid smoke. This gives it a nice smoky flavor. If you want, you can use paprika instead. Then take about 1/4 cup of brown sugar. We don't have a lot of krauts here, so we're not using a lot of sugar. And just sprinkle it on top of your krauts. And last but not least, we are going to use balsamic vinegar instead of cider vinegar for this. Now, let's see. You're going to have probably about 1/4 to 1/2 cup. This stuff's strong, so pour it right on. Don't use it all because you're going to want some for when you serve them. And last but not least, we are going to add some water. Again, fill it to just about the bottom of where the bottom of the krauts start. And then we're going to put this on the stove on a medium-high heat. Again, we're going to let this cook for maybe 10 to 20 minutes, and we'll check back. Okay, our moment of truth has arrived. It has been about half an hour, 45 minutes, and our krauts have been here boiling away beautifully, and they are just about ready. The ones on the top are a little lighter, but that's because they weren't in the actual water. As you heat them up, they will absolutely get lighter and softer. All right, the real moment of truth is here. Our krauts are done. Now take them out and let them drain. Eat them like crazy. What I like to do is I like to cut them up and drizzle a little more cider vinegar on them, some salt and pepper, and we are in business. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you love this recipe as much as I do. And I hope it brings fond memories back like it does to me. Don't forget, like, subscribe, hit that notify button, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed the video. And Denise, Gloria, Heidi, all you guys, I hope you try it out, because now you know how to make it, and you have no excuse why you can't make Mark's krauts. I'll see you later. Love yous. Peace.